Well, hey, everyone. Welcome back to Empowered Educator, the podcast where you put your leadership in motion and make an impact on a larger scale. I'm your host, Dr. Mel van de Voort, and today I have the second half of my awesome conversation with Dr. Darrin Peppard. On Friday, we had part one of the conversation, and it took an unexpected turn, but a really happy unexpected turn. We ended up talking about educational entrepreneurship, and you know that's a passion of mine, and it was super exciting to get to talk to someone else who shares that same passion. And today is the second half of that conversation with Dr. Darrin, where we talked about building and maintaining high-functioning leadership teams in that educational setting. We talked about the importance of leadership clarity, leveraging individual strengths within your team, and fostering a collaborative culture that aligns with a clear and compelling vision. So thank you for joining us for the second half. Let's get started. Hi, friend. Are you ready to move into a leadership position? Do you have interests and ambitions that you want to pursue, but feel like you don't know how to take that next step? Maybe you want to start your own coaching or consulting agency. I'm Mel, and I help educators define their career path through correct mindset, knowing your options, and getting prepared for your career transition. I will show you how to level up your leadership skills, share your expertise in a new way, create impact on a larger scale, and put your leadership in motion. As an educator for over 20 years, I started to feel underused and like I had more to give. I knew when the time had come for me to leave the classroom and affect change on a larger level. Now, I'm ready to help you determine where your talents and skills mesh with your passions and interests. Put your leadership in motion and move into that next phase of your educational career journey. Let me help you define your career path by having the right mindset, knowing your options, and getting prepared for that next leadership position. So power up and put your leadership in motion. So let's go ahead and move into leadership teams, leadership clarity. Let's talk a little bit about that. Let's start with leadership teams for sure, because that is definitely like we've already been talking about it a little bit, I think, because we were talking about MLDS and collaboration. So that's the upper level leadership team. But are you thinking like leadership team within the building? What is your take on that?
Yeah. It's interesting. And I'm glad we actually talked about the entrepreneurship piece first, because it leads into this really, really well. When I first jumped out, I thought, I'm going to go speak in schools and I'm going to talk about culture and climate. And I still do that. That's very much a passion of mine. But where it really, really, really continued to grow and niche down for me has been working with those individual leaders. But now even more so, it's the leadership teams. A handful of the contracts that I have are not just coaching the building principal, but the entire school team. Or maybe it's not just the superintendent, it's the entire cabinet that I'm working with. And what I've discovered, Mel, over the last 2 or 3 years, and it's just become clearer and clearer and clearer to me, there are really highly functioning leadership teams, but they're few and far between. Most leadership teams are functioning, but not at a super high level. And then there are some that are honestly highly dysfunctional. And I don't work with many of those. But what I've been really digging deep into and researching more and more and more, and this is actually going to be one of my next books that I'm working on, will really be about what is it that separates the truly highly functional leadership teams from the teams that just miss the mark, that don't quite get where they need to be. And we pour so much into the individual leader, you and I both. But if we don't take that leader up on the balcony with us to look at the entire team and to understand Do we have people in the right seats? Do we have them all understanding the rules of the sandbox, if you will? I mean, if each member of your leadership team kind of has their own sandbox, and if you're the principal, like the whole school is your sandbox, do they understand how we work and play well together? Are we all functioning with an end goal in mind? Do we share a common vision, a compelling vision for the school? Not the crap we paint and write on the wall,
Right.
the mission of our school, the vision of our school.
Yes.
That stuff's cool for your strategic plan and that kind of stuff. But what do you really see? Where do you really want your school to go? And how do your members of the team work collaboratively and intentionally together to ensure that that vision comes to life? And that's really where my work has really pushed deeply. I mentioned to you, I'm getting ready to head to an event here in a few minutes, and I'm actually going to be working with a leadership team for the next 2 days, pouring very heavily into those specific things. How does this leadership team with a new principal, with a fairly new assistant superintendent overseeing that collective group, how do we come to that common vision? How do we align the values that each of us have so that we're focused on results, so that we're ensuring that we're building a culture that matters, where, we're ensuring that everybody understands where the compass is pointed and what their responsibility is to help us get there. So that's really, to me, that's the leadership team piece that I have been pushing deeply into, and just learning so much about it, both through research and then also through, actual applied practice working with lots of leadership teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you were talking, I was thinking, you had mentioned when you first become a principal, or maybe even a superintendent or an assistant or whatever, you think that people look at you to know all of the answers and stuff. But as I was going through MLDS and Leadership Academy, that was one of the things that we were told: leverage your people, leverage the talent in your building or in your district, because you're never going to have all of the answers. And you don't want to have all of the answers, because guess what? There's going to be some really good answers coming from some other people that you didn't even think of. And so there's no way you can see every perspective, and you're going to miss some things. Like you said, you're going to miss the mark on some things because you're not leveraging the talent around you. Right.
Well, and I've been around those leaders, both, in the work I do now, and then also, previously as a superintendent, as a building principal. There are 2 or 3 who come to mind, like I can see their face in my mind's eye right now, that always wanted everything done their way, and everything had to be exactly their way. And that honestly is one of the big struggles, one of the big things that will hamstring a team, when the leader insists that everything is done a specific way. When the leader instead is focused on the outcomes, focused on the results, and allowing the people around them, I like how you said it, leverage your people, trust them to do their job.
Yes.
Recently on my show, I had a great conversation with Dr. Danya Ball, who's a superintendent in California. And we meandered to talking about micromanagement. And one of the things that she talked about was that, insistence that everything must be done my way, and not giving autonomy to not only to do the work, but to achieve the results.
Yes.
It's when we allow that to happen that teams now start to truly be more of a team than individuals who have their own sandboxes, if that makes some sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was that teacher who wanted the autonomy and did not want to be micromanaged. But then I also became, I have a strong personality, and I've had to learn to rein that in and leverage people around me, because I was also that teacher who was like, I had a student aide who I didn't let her do anything because she didn't do it my way. And I'm like, I just cheated her out of a whole year of using her talent because I didn't think she could do it the way I wanted to. And so I cheated her. I cheated students around her, the kids in my class. And I've done that a lot. And I mean, the last few years, I'm like, what is wrong with you? And so now I'm like, you got some help for me? Let me have it, because I want to hear what you have to say, because I don't have all the answers. And so I've completely flipped my mindset, which is something I think is a good leadership trait, is being able to have that fluid mindset and not a fixed mindset. Definitely.
Right. Oh,
definitely.
I totally agree with you. Yeah. If I could go back to 2011 when I first became a principal, holy cow, what I've learned since then. I think, you hit it on the head there. And I think so often, and this happens for most, not all, but for most leaders, as they kind of make their way through the first couple of years into that third or fourth year, where you're no longer with your head underwater. You're very comfortable in your skin. You're not a firefighter. You're truly living in leadership world, right? And I noticed this with my leadership team as a principal about year 3, where when they would come to me with something, instead of telling them what to do, I would just ask, tell me what you're thinking. What might you do? What are your thoughts here? And the more that I leaned into answering their questions with questions, and it started to become a punchline, to be honest with you. Both with that group, with my principals when I was a superintendent, they're like, all right, I have a question and I know you're going to answer it with a question, but here we go. The more as the leader, you can lean back into them. These are highly intelligent people, right? These are people who have ascended to the role they're in for a reason. Trust them, lean into them, and give them the opportunity. Just ask. Tell me what you are thinking. And then if they're way off base, that's when you ask more questions. Well, what might happen if you go down this road? Well, what about this? What about that? And that's where you really start to get comfortable in your role and get really good at your role, when you're able to see that big picture for those around you. And that's really what the leadership piece is all about, is being able to allow others to do that work. And at the same time, you're shaping it all to that vision you have for your school, your district, your organization, whatever you're leading. To me, that's what it's really all about.
Yeah. As you were talking, and you were talking about answering a question with a question, it brought to mind a book that I had read, and his last name is Voss. I can't think of his first name, but he was an FBI negotiator. And he said that you do that. You ask questions, or you will repeat the last 3 words of what they said. And you're not really asking a question, but you are, because you're just repeating the last 3 things that they said.
Yeah.
And then you're waiting for them to give you more information. And then that directs the direction, where you go from there, because you're not giving information. You're just seeking clarification at that moment. And that's such a great way to let people come to you, feel comfortable with you. Then they get to explain, and your people already know, well, he's going to ask questions, so I need to be prepared. So your people are probably coming to you pretty prepared, instead of coming to you seeking answers, because they probably come to you already with the answers.
Yeah. They just don't realize it. Right.
Yeah.
And I like how you said that too. I hadn't even really thought of it exactly that way, but they are coming more and more and more prepared, because they are becoming more and more autonomous. And if anything, they're just seeking just a little bit of reinforcement. You know, hey,
encouragement.
Darrin, am I on the right page here? Is this the right move? And usually the answer is yes. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes when we say, that's the right move, it's still not the right move. The more that collectively you're able to have those questions. And to me, it's like, I'm a huge Ted Lasso fan. To me, it's like a true Ted Lasso leadership lesson. Leadership lesson number 1, the DART scene: be curious. Be curious, be curious, be curious. Just the more you can ask questions. Heck, I would be honest with you, Mel. I tell leaders this all the time when it comes to like going into classrooms. When you're doing walkthroughs, quit worrying so much about your little checklist and all that other stuff. Be curious. Let's be curious about the strategies the teacher's using. Be curious. Ask questions of the students.
Exactly.
Your teachers, same thing with your leaders, right? Same thing. ask them good questions. They already know the answers.
Yep.
They just need somebody to ask the questions. That's the key. So,
right. And they may not have thought they knew the answer, but it's there. Right. You just have to pull it out with your questioning technique. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And that's how a good coach does it too. That's how a good coach does it too. Just ask good questions.
Yes. And that's what I've spent the last couple of years doing, was being an instructional coach, because that was my role. I was dean of instruction. So, I mean, it was more than just an instructional coach role, but that was a part of it. I was not a great instructional coach as a principal because, yes, I was just learning the job and trying to keep my head above water, or use the the snorkel under the water and breathe underwater kind of thing. But I had gotten so much better as an instructional coach. And that's when I realized, man, I learned some things here that I had never learned as a teacher or as a principal.
Right.
Now I can leverage that and turn that into my consultancy, and I can teach other people what I just learned.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah. I think that's really powerful.
All right. So we are running short on time. Give us some last words of wisdom for those new leaders or someone who wants to be an educational entrepreneur.
Yeah. Well, I would tell you, I'll go to the same one word for everyone on this. And it's my one word this year, but it's really been a word that's been important to me since I started working with my leadership coach many, many years ago. And that word's clarity. I think that the biggest struggle that most leaders have is just not being clear about what matters. And when we aren't clear, whether that's as a leader, as an entrepreneur, as a parent, I mean, it doesn't matter what role. If we're not clear about what we're looking for, about what matters to us, about what we value, about where we see the vision for our school, our business, our family to be, that's where struggles happen. Most teachers, I'll stay with this on building principles specifically, but it applies across the board. But many building level leaders struggle with that clarity piece. And most teachers, they're pleasers. They want to make their administrator happy.
Yes.
I mean, there are a few who just love to be a thorn in their side. Right. But by far and away, and actually even my biggest thorns in my side still wanted to make me happy. But I think when we don't get really clear about what matters to us, and not just in our own mind, that's the first step. You've got to get clear there. But the second piece is making sure others know, what do you care about? What do you value? And what are you looking for? Because they can't hit a target they can't see. Again, I talked about it with the leadership team piece, but if you're a new leader, step one, get really clear on what your vision is for your school. And not a lofty, throw all those flowery, lifelong learner, prepared for future system. Put all that crap aside.
Right.
Where do you see your school in 2 years? Don't try to do a 5 year or a 9, 2 years. Where do you see your school? And what does it look like? What does a graduate look like? Or what does a student look like? What does a teacher look like? Right. And then you know what you're looking for. Then don't just tell everybody on day one and never talk about it again. You got to live that out loud.
Live it.
You've got to walk that walk. You've got to make sure you're talking about it all the time. You've got to get your leadership team to own that exact same vision. They will then in turn get the whole school to own that vision. And man, when you really get it rolling, it's like you've got your community living that vision. I felt like my last 3 years probably as a building level principal, that's where we were. We were all living that vision. And man, we had so much success. And it all starts with, as the individual leader, the primary leader, you got to be clear about what matters. And once you're clear, others will start to be clear behind you. To me, that's what it's all about.
Right.
If you can get clear, then start being intentional with what you do to align to that clarity, man, then you're sailing on the road to awesome right there.
Yes. Yeah. Well, this has been an awesome conversation. I really appreciate you being on here today. If my audience would like to connect with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, a couple of quick ways that you get in touch with me. If you go to our website, roadtoawesome.net, there's a contact form on every page. You can join our mailing list right away when you get on the website. That's a really, really great way to get in touch with us. And then on social media, I'm Darrin M. Peppard on virtually every platform. So whether that's LinkedIn, TikTok, Twitter, X, whatever the kids are calling that one now,
Right.
Instagram, Facebook, all of them. That's where I'm at, Darrin M. Peppard.
Wonderful. And for all of my audience, you know that I'll have all of his contact information in the show notes. Thank you again so much for being on today. It has been a wonderful conversation and I've learned a lot, and I hope my audience has too. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you back here, same time, same place next week. Bye-bye.